Hello everybody and welcome to another YouTube video. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you an awesome platform called Choreo. Now Choreo is made by WSO2, which is actually the sponsor of this video. I do have to disclose that they have paid me to create this video, but this is an awesome platform and I think you guys are going to be really interested to see what this can actually do. So to give you a really quick summary of what this platform is, essentially it's a low-code cloud-native engineering platform for developers. Now, I know here it says professional developers, but even if you're just trying to create a simple API, microservice, something like that, and you want to easily be able to deploy it, test it, and view all of the statistics and kind of analytics related to it, Choreo is definitely something to check out. So as it says here, low-code, cloud-native engineering for professional developers, and really what that's saying is that you can actually use the Choreo online editor to create and design all of your different services and APIs, and the code will automatically be generated for you. Now, of course, you can go in and manually modify the code, but it's really cool how this works, and I was able to actually get my first APIs and services running on Choreo in like 2 or 3 minutes. And when I say running, I mean fully deployed, credentials, authentication, everything. It just worked. It was just done. And so it's super impressive, and that's why I'm going to show it to you today. Anyways, what are the core benefits of Choreo? Well, you can create an integration, build microservices, manage an API, run professional DevOps, and build an API marketplace. Of course, you can do a lot more than that as well. And then here, this is kind of the main feature for me, at least, that's really interesting, which is the simultaneous low code and code. So low code is kind of this diagram you see on the left-hand side. I'm going to show it to you in 1 second. And this is synchronized with the actual code on the right-hand side of the screen. And so when you make a change to the code, it changes to the diagram. When you make a change to the diagram, it changes the code. And you can really just go and do everything on the diagram. You don't even need to write any code, at least if you're doing something that's kind of simple. All right, and then all the tools you need for cloud native engineering in one platform. So obviously it has a bunch of different integrations. It has stuff like Twilio, it has email and SMS authentication, GitHub, everything you would really need, honestly. So moving on here, it says idea to production in hours, not minutes. Now, I can vouch for this. Really, the best part of this platform is that it deploys everything for you. So that is really what I appreciated, because I'm not a big DevOps guy. I'm not big into Kubernetes. And what this actually does is run your API and services through a DevOps pipeline, and then it deploys it in a Kubernetes cluster on the cloud with proper authentication and everything. All right, so that's kind of the summary on Choreo. Now, if you guys want to check this out for yourself, you can click the link in the description and create your first Choreo app. But what I'm going to do now is head over to the Choreo portal. This is where you're actually going to do all of the API and microservice creation. I'm just going to walk you through some services that I've created. So clearly here we have services, APIs, and integrations, kind of the main things to be looking at. I'll just quickly show you this integrations tab because it's pretty interesting what you can do here. Now, I'm not going to walk through any of this in depth, but you can see that you can actually use Choreo to integrate with GitHub, with Salesforce, with Google Sheets, with Google Drive, with Twilio, with Slack, with a bunch of other things. And so if you're interested in doing that, then obviously head over to Choreo and check it out, and you can see how that works. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just go to my services. So I'm going to press explore here. Notice I have 2 services. Now to create a new one, you would press create. You can create the name of your service, and then you can just start building it out. What you also can do, though, is you can click on the try out samples, and you can try out some of the samples that they have. One of the services I have running is actually this sample right here. So if you just want to mess around with this, just click the World Bank data to COVID-19 statistics, and then you can kind of mess around with the platform and see how it works. All right, so what I'm going to do is go to my World Bank development service here, and I'm just going to press on develop. Now, what this is going to do is bring me into this view that I was talking about, right? Where we have kind of the editor on the left-hand side, the no-code view, and then we have the other view over here. So these things are synchronized, as I was saying. So any change to something on the left is going to affect the right and vice versa. So I'll just quickly show you what I mean by this, but you can see that we have, a resource. This is saying, okay, we're going to get, and then some endpoint. This endpoint is development/indicators, okay? And if I go here and I just modify this, so notice my path says development/indicators, then it's saying, okay, we're going to take a parameter. This is string country. Let's just change this to just say indicators. So if I do that and I press save API, notice on the right-hand side of my screen here, this changes, right? This used to say development/indicators. Now it just says indicators. In the same way, if I go here and I say, okay, let's change this back to development, and now let's save, let's see what happens on the right-hand side. Notice when I go back to edit, development is back. So that's a really cool thing here, is that you have a single source of truth, which is this code, and this code is modified when you modify the diagram, or obviously when you modify the code itself, and then it reflects that change in the diagram. So that's kind of the basic idea of how this works. So let me just walk through this service for you and just discuss kind of what it actually is doing, and then I'll show you this in deployment. I have a Python client again that's implementing this. So it says resource. This is a get resource, so that's what we've defined. We're going to accept a get request here, and then what we're starting off by doing is creating a new World Bank endpoint. Now this is built into Choreo. This is just some integration that they have, but the whole point of this endpoint right here is to get indicators related to the development of different countries. So it's going to give the population and the GDP of whatever country you pass to this endpoint. And so if we look here, we can see we're creating a new World Bank endpoint. That's where we're getting the data from. Then we are sending a request to that endpoint that is getting the population by country. So here on the get request, we're accepting a country, typing in a country. We're then creating the endpoint. We're then sending that country to the get population by country method. That's going to return to us the population of the country. And then we're getting the GDP by the country. So in the same way, sending it to this endpoint and then getting a response that gives us the GDP. Then what we are doing is having a response, and this response is going to have both the population and the GDP in JSON format, and we're going to return. So if you look here, we can see we are returning status, success, indicators, population, get population response, dot value, and then GDP, get GDP country response, dot value. So that's all we're doing, pretty straightforward. So that's what this does. Now what I'm going to do is just run this for you, although you can see it's already running down here, and just show you how we can actually mess with this endpoint. There's a few different ways to do this. So let's bring this up here and notice how we have this run and test tab. Now, right now this is running, but if I wanted to stop it, I would simply press this stop button. So I can press stop application. Once that's done, then we obviously can rerun. So I'm just going to run the application again. Now this takes a second. Okay, let's run this. And there we go. It says your integration is successfully started. All right, so there we go. It's now started. You can see it has the test invoke URL. So this is the URL we're going to use to actually test this application. And then you can see kind of some output here from the actual app. Now, once you do this, once you press run, you should see that it pops up this window here that says try and shows you curl. So here what you can do is choose between your test or your deployment servers. Now, in this case, I'm just going to use my test server or my test domain URL, whatever you want to call it. And notice it's giving you kind of the documentation of this endpoint. So I have development / indicators, and then I need to pass a parameter, which is country. Now, if I click on this, I can actually just go ahead and test out this endpoint. So I can press try it out. I can now fill in a country. I'm going to put in CA for Canada, and then I'm going to press execute. Now, once I do this, notice that we're going to get a response here. We get status success. Indicators, we get our population, 34 million, and our GDP, I guess that's like 1.6 trillion or something like that. Regardless, that's what we're getting, right? So this is all working. We can see that we have 200 as our status code, and that is literally from me creating this little diagram. We have a fully functioning API. Now, to prove to you that I'm not cheating and that this actually does work outside of this platform, I'm going to show you this running in my kind of little test client that I've created, but I'm also just going to show you what happens if I copy this URL and just put it right into my address bar. So if I go here, this is the base URL. Now where I want to go to is development / indicators. Convenient, that's right there, but we'll just type it out. So development / indicators like that. And then in this time, we'll do /US. So when I do /US, notice we get our population. I guess that's 309 million. And then our GDP here to the exponent 13. Nice. There we go. We got what we need. So this does work outside of here. Now I could change the country. If I go IND for India, we can see the population and GDP here. And obviously you can try this out with any other country that you want. Now I did notice that for this specific API, it takes like the initials of the country. So if you type Canada like that, it's not going to work. You need to actually give like CA or US or whatever the kind of initials of the country would be. Nice though. Okay, so that is how that works. Now that is the test server. So on the test server, you don't need any credentials, you don't need any headers with your request, but when you actually have this fully deployed, you need to have some authentication headers. So right here, I'm just in test mode, so we're just testing it out. But what I'm going to do now is go to go live. But actually, before I do that, I'll just quickly show you that as well as using this kind of little try form that pops up here, you can also use Postman. So I've not linked my Postman account to this, but you can link Postman and you can set up tests through Postman, or you can actually set up tests right here through the programming language, which is Ballerina. Now, I'm not going to show that to you, just showing you that you can indeed do that. You can make automated tests, and then it will run those tests for you on the API. Obviously, something that's pretty useful. So what I'm going to do now is press on Go Live. So this is actually going to bring me to the page related to kind of the deployment server, right? So the actual final product. Now notice we have our production invoke URL. So I'm going to copy that URL. And notice now that if I go here and I use this production URL and I try to go development/indicators, it's saying that I don't have the right security credentials. This is because we need an API key and we have to send that API key through in a header as a part of the request here to be able to actually get a response. That's different than the test server. The test server, you obviously don't need that. And you can see I have some logs here. I had some errors previously, obviously, when I was messing around with this. So here it says security header, right? So what I can do is view the security header, or I can copy it to clipboard. So it says I've copied it to the clipboard. I'll just go here to Sublime Text, which is where I have my client. Then I can paste this, and obviously you can see the API key. Now you should not show people the API key, but this is just a tutorial. So I'm just kind of showing it to you right here. But regardless, this is an API key, and to be able to access the production server or endpoint, you need to pass through as a header the API key. And so here I'm in a little Python client I've created. So what I'm going to do is just run this Python client. So I'm going to open up my command prompt here, which is where I'm going to run it from. I'm just going to go, actually, I think I had the command already, Python Choreo demo.py. And what it's going to do is ask me to enter a country. So you can kind of read through the code if you want. It's quite straightforward. I'm going to enter the country CA. And then notice it's showing me the population and the GDP. Now let's try US. Nice. Let's try India. Nice. There we go. So you can see the different populations and GDPs. Perfect. So all I've done here is I've just sent a request using the Python request module, request.get. I'm sending it to this base URL, which is the deployment URL. I then have my endpoint, so development indicators, and then I'm passing through as a header right here, the API key. And then if there's not an error from the response, I'm simply printing out the population and the data, and I'm getting that obviously from the response.json. Nice. So that is how this works. Sweet. So now I'll just show you a few more things related to actually kind of observing your API and your deployment. So here, let me just close this and let's move this over a bit just so we can see it. All right, so this is the execution history. Pretty straightforward, showing you all the executions of the API or service or resource, whatever that you've created. Notice it shows you which ones were successful, which ones had errors, and there you go. Now it also shows you the success rate of all of the individual calls you have inside of this API service. So I have a 69% success rate for get population by country, 100% success rate by get GDP by country, and then showing me the average latency or response time, of each of these resources so I can see what's taking longer and maybe what I would want to cut out or move to different places in my application. So really useful information. It's pretty hard to get this information unless you have some type of platform like this or you're actually doing, real monitoring of your API. So definitely super useful. So another interesting thing to note here is that Choreo actually uses AI to forecast and try to predict what the average latency and throughput of your deployed resource, API, whatever it is going to be. So in this case, you can see the throughput is 5 requests per minute and the latency is 11.16 seconds. At least that's what the AI is forecasting. So pretty interesting. That's in the bottom right-hand corner. Now what I'm going to do, though, is I'm actually going to show you how we can modify this API and how easy it is. So the modification I'm going to make is that I actually want to send an email to myself every single time this API runs. So I'll show you how to do this, but I'm going to add something here. And let me actually just kind of make this full screen so it's easier to see. So let's go over here. I'm going to press a little plus, and right after I get the population and the GDP, but before I send the response, I want to send an email. So I'm going to go to API calls, and then notice there's mail by Choreo. Now there's a bunch of other ones as well. You have SMS, you have World Bank, you have a weather API, a bunch of other APIs and integrations you can do, right? But in this case, we're just going to use mail. So let's press on mail, and then I can choose here the operation that I want to perform. And notice that the default operation is send email. that is what I want to do. And then it actually gives you the documentation for this operation on the right-hand side of the screen. So this documentation obviously will be for the code. We don't actually need to write the code though, because you can see I can just put in all of the different values that we actually need. And I'm getting auto completion here of all of the different variables I have in my code. So if I open up my code here, you can see that the reason it's giving me get population response is because, well, that's one of the variables that I have, get population response. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hard code in a recipient for the email, and then I'll put a subject and message body, and I'll show you that this actually works every single time you call this API. So for the recipient, I have this kind of dummy email that I use for some YouTube videos. So I'm going to call this code racer live stream app at gmail.com. For the subject, I will go Choreo API. And for the message body, oops, sorry, this needs to be in a string. Here, you got to put this actually in a string, like double quotation marks. And then for the message body, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to put here, but I might just put what the GDP and the population actually is, assuming that we actually do have a GDP and population. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get population response dot, sorry, it's going to be 0 question mark dot value. Now I won't explain exactly what this is, but this is just going to get the value from the population response. So it's saying this needs to be a string. Notice it's actually giving me the error message, which is quite nice. So what I'm going to do is just convert this to a string. And now what this should do is actually email me the population of whatever the country is that I typed in. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to change it. I'm going to say Choreo API results for, and then I'm going to say plus, and then country, which will be a string. So the subject will actually show what country I got the results for. And then what we'll do is we'll say population colon plus, this all needs to be a string, and oops, and then we'll go plus, we'll do the pipe, and then we'll say GDP, and then in the same way I'll do the GDP. So I'll go plus, and then this is going to be get GDP by country response. This will be at index 0 question mark dot value, like that, and then dot to string. Nice, so that should actually be good. That should work now when it sends the email, but let's see what's happening here. So it says undefined symbol, and then says click here to convert the expression to a string. Nice, so let's do that. Adds the quotation marks for me. Really nice, and now what I can do is simply press save. All right, so now that I've pressed save, we should see that it adds in this diagram here the send email. So let's zoom out a little bit, and you can see that we now have this kind of resource here that we're using. We're sending a request over to send email, and it will then send that email after we hit this API. And if we go here to the code, we can see that we've now implemented that. So let's just make this a bit bigger. And we have send email, or making an email client. We have the email we actually want to send the email to, and then the string that we would like to send. Nice, so let's test this out now. I will just do this. Actually, I can do this from production, but I need to redeploy my application. So let's do that, and I can show you how that works. So what I'm going to do is go to go live. All right, and I'm just going to stop this and redeploy it, because whenever you make a change, obviously you need to redeploy. Yeah, see, it says redeploy the service for the latest changes to go live. So stopping. Once this is done, I will restart it, and then I will show you how this works. All right, so that is now finished. Now notice there is a deploy button, so I will press deploy. All right, so it is now deploying. As it says, it's going to take a few minutes to finish. So once it is done, I will be back, and then I will show you how this now works with the email and how it's actually sending the email to me. All right, so the deployment was successful. All is working. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my implementation here, and I'm just going to rerun this program. So Python Choreo demo.py, enter country, let's enter CA. And give it a second here, gives us the population and the GDP. And now what I'm going to do is go to my email and show you that I did actually get the email, right? It just sent me an email from choreo.demo@gmail.com. I got my population and I got my GDP, and it says Choreo API results for CA, for Canada, right? And I can show you that this will work again. So let's go here and let's go India. Okay, that was pretty fast. We get our population and GDP. Go to email, and instantly I have gotten the email that has the GDP and the population. So that is how easy it is to integrate email and to actually change all of the code. Obviously, you just have to wait for it to deploy, but that's natural. It's going to take a few minutes for it to happen. All right, so then the last thing I will show you here is how you can actually monitor and observe your services, APIs, whatever that are deployed. So when you press on the Observe tab, what this is going to do is bring you to a similar view that we saw before, and it's going to show you the latency for every single one of the services that you have. Now, obviously, sending the email is going to take the longest. That makes sense. And then you can actually go and look at some graphs of the throughput and the latency. So let's make this full screen so we can see everything. So let's just change this. So rather than past hour, we have past 10 minutes, and we can see all of the requests that we've sent, how long on average it takes for them to be finished. So in this case, we had about, I guess that's 1.3 seconds. This one was much faster. It was only about 4 seconds, or sorry, not 4 seconds, 0.4 seconds. Then we can look at the diagnostics view, and we can see any errors that have occurred. So it shows us memory, CPU, and then any errors. So if I go here, you can see this is an error that occurred when we sent some type of request. Nice. Now there's a lot more that you can do. Obviously, you can change the time zone here. You can change the refresh time. You can look at more statistics. You can look at the logs. So if I go to logs, we could have actually been logging stuff if we wanted to. We're not doing that, but we could. And then system and alerts, I guess, are blurred out for this one right here. Nice. So that is pretty much all I need to show you. Now, I guess the last thing I will do is quickly hop back to services and just show you another service that I actually have running. So World Bank data to COVID-19 statistics. So let's click on this. We are in the develop view. And notice in the same way that the other one worked, we have just the diagram of what we've created. And then we have all of the code on the right-hand side here. And while I just want to show you that this is diverse, you can obviously do multiple things. And this is something else that you could do as well, right? So this is actually giving you COVID-19 related data. So it's giving you, I guess, the number of cases per 1,000 people or per 100,000 people or something along those lines. And anyways, you can just kind of have a look at this and see how this one differs a bit from the other one that we just looked at. So yeah, with that said, I think I'm going to end the video here. So a massive thank you to WSO2 for sponsoring this video and having me talk to you about Choreo. Yes, of course, this is sponsored. I am disclosing that to you guys, but this is actually a really, really cool platform. And I was genuinely surprised when I started using it at just how fast it was to actually get this stuff up and running. And I mean, you saw me in this video, I made a change, I deployed it, and that maybe took 2 or 3 minutes for it to actually deploy to the Kubernetes cluster. I was then able to use it. It actually sent an email, just a super cool thing, and obviously a great platform to check out if you want to do something like this. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you in another YouTube video.